One of the biggest tasks that we are faced with as teachers is figuring out how to keep all of our students engaged. And that's a question I've been getting a lot is, can you talk about engagement? And engagement's such a huge topic. So I thought I would make up an acronym for it that would kind of help you start to think about, am I planning my lessons to engage all students? So your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to engage all of your students. And we're going to talk about each of these letters one by one. So the M in mission stands for movement, I for inquiry, S for see and use charts. The next S is for surprises, I is for integrate arts, O for offer language support, and N for use numbers and data. If you do all of these things, I promise you're going to have a much more engaging classroom. So let's dive into what each one looks like. The M in Mission Engage is to make sure that you're allowing for opportunities for movement for all of your students throughout the course. Developmentally, most of our students should not be sitting still for more than 10 to 15 minutes at the very most. So think about bringing in activities where students can be up, moving, and if they're doing something simple like recall, how could they be using their feet or their hands or a partner in order to move through different tasks? What you'll see pictured is a simple phonics drill where students are tapping with their feet when they find the phoneme that aligns with the sounds that I say. And we do it in kind of a race form, but everyone gets points as long as they get it correctly. Then you're going to see just a simple activity that I'm doing at home. And what I do with that is something I actually did in the classroom quite a bit, which was created challenges where things were hidden around the classroom and then students had to pair or match them together. So for example, students would find a bunch of different cards with different equations and then other cards with different answers, and they'd have to match them together. Just that simple movement mid-class to check for understanding or as a warm-up, or even as an end of the class activity makes class more engaging, more fun, and you can use that as an incentive or a contingent activity that they'll be able to get up and move. But plan movement into every single lesson, every single day. The next element that we'll look at is the I, which stands for inquiry. When we're thinking about inquiry, this can be a small part of every lesson. It doesn't have to be a big, huge part of every lesson. But by allowing students to kind of play with things, they start to develop a awareness of what the terms that you're going to be teaching are or what the ideas you're going to be teaching are without ever actually teaching them those skills. So I like to use inquiry in my openings a lot. What you'll see in inquiry, one of the biggest parts was a lesson on friction, and that lesson had students making their own meaning of the term friction by trying to rescue goats that were stranded at the top of a mountain and using different ramps to get them down. So before they ever heard the term friction, they understood that sometimes the goats would slide faster and sometimes slower, depending on the amount of friction. So it was very easy to build their awareness of that word friction once we had engaged in that activity. There's a couple other examples of using inquiry to help students play with numbers or data in order to build groups, things like that, because students need to be able to experience the materials before you can really help them make those strong connections and synthesize information. The first S stands for see and use charts. A lot of people call these anchor charts, but I really like for you to think of them as see and use charts because oftentimes anchor charts are put up on the wall and then never referred to again. See and use charts are something that you should be constantly sending your students to go touch the chart, find the information, point out where it is. Use those charts frequently in order to make sure that students are using their resources or becoming more independent, more proactive, and it'll really help them start to better retain the material if you can direct them to a chart instead of simply giving them an answer. S is for surprises. Students should always feel like when they walk into their classroom, something amazing could happen that day. So whether it is planning a Harry Potter themed day where students are all sorted into houses to get them engaged in reading activities, or bringing the Phoenix Zoo into your classroom, it's free for Title I classrooms, or just surprising them with a special award ceremony where they're recognized in different ways. Having surprises, having an element of, I don't know what to expect when I go into class today, is so critical and important for your students to feel engaged in the classroom. Integrating arts is one of the most important things we can do to help students learn conceptually. So having them build or draw models of things that they're learning about is critical. Having them use hands-on equations, or having them create a model from a scene in a book to really understand the setting, the character motivation, what's going on, is a really critical aspect of helping students learn. Having students draw out what they think something would look like, or what the model should look like for the layers of the earth, or for a different math problem, or for the different potential outcomes in a story, all help students really, number one, learn the material, but number two, also recognize the students who maybe don't express themselves in a simple multiple choice test or an essay. This is a way for students to show their learning in a completely new way, and also values the art that our students are bringing to our classrooms. Offering language supports throughout every class, every day, is an absolutely one of the most important things you can do to engage students. If they can't understand you, or they can't comprehend the vocabulary, they're not learning. So sentence frames, things like word walls, visuals, having students act out certain new vocabulary terms, all of those things are a critical aspect of you being able to engage your students. If they can't understand what you're saying, they can't learn it no matter how bright they are. So help them by constantly offering language supports, not just during reading and writing time, throughout the day. And finally, the N in mission stands for numbers and data. It is absolutely critical that your students understand where they're at when they started, and where they're going, what their goals are, etc. If a student is an 8th grader who's reading at a 1st grade level, school is very demotivating to them if the only numbers and data we use are found on standardized tests. So using numbers and data to help track and show their progress is so important. You'll see in my examples the full class trackers, where we track our class average so as not to single anyone out, individual trackers where we track growth for the students, set goals, students keep those and they keep them up to date themselves, and then my personal tracker as the teacher where I can look, find trends, make groups, etc. All of those things are so critical. And when students track their own data and understand where they're going, where they've been, and that they are making progress, it makes them even more engaged in your classroom. So when you think about engagement, think about it as a mission. Movement, inquiry, see and use charts, surprises, integrate arts, offer language supports, numbers and data, and engage your students. Good luck. I know you'll have an engaging and world-changing year.